Behind the Built Environment, the podcast from BESA, the UK's leading trade body for the building engineering services sector.
Hello, I'm David Frise, Chief Executive of BESA, and welcome to Behind the Built Environment, the podcast where I delve into the major issues facing our industry through in-depth conversations with key industry leaders. Join us as we explore the trends, challenges and innovations shaping the future of the built environment. And today we welcome Amanda Long. Welcome, Amanda. She's Chief Executive of Construction Products Information Limited, the not-for-profit organisation set up to guard, manage and assess conformance of the Code for Construction Product Information, CCPI. That's quite a mouthful, I've got to say, Amanda. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Amanda has a wealth of experience driving ethical business practice and championing consumer protection, including the Considerate Constructor Scheme, Building a Safer Future, and now leading the Code for Construction Product Information. We like to kick off with 5 simple yes/no answers. Now, I know we discussed this in shall we say, the green room beforehand. You said you'd struggle with this, but yes/no, please. Have product manufacturers changed the way they provide information since the Grenfell disaster?
No.
Have manufacturers been properly held to account for misleading information provided in the past?
I think that one's a question for the police and the justice, not for me, David.
Will the Building Safety Act transform the construction industry?
Not on its own.
Yeah, okay. Will there always be bad actors who put building occupants at risk?
Yes.
Is progress towards a better standard of product information moving fast enough?
No.
Right. You did better than I thought you might do.
I'd love to put caveats against all of those comments, but that's for later.
We'll come on to that later. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and how it all began for you, and how did you end up working within the construction sector?
My career has gone across a number of different sectors, and there's sort of the golden thread, I think, that sits throughout my career is driving ethical business and transformational change. And I've done that in sort of different sectors in relation to being part of creating the first or one of the first eco labels for consumers around sustainable fisheries and knowing where you're buying your fisheries from. So certification, traceability were all sort of part of that, as well as product information. Directly before I moved into the construction sector, I was 6 years as Director General of a global charity representing 200 consumer organisations from across 120 countries as the statutory consultee at the United Nations, the OECD, the World Trade Organisation, all of those other places where there's sort of international discussion about that affects government policy in countries. And consumer protection was sort of the piece that I was championing there. So 6 years of that and working very internationally, I decided I wanted to bring that skill set back home and do something back home. At that time, the Considerate Constructor Scheme were advertising for a chief executive, and I was really interested in it because it was one of those sort of ubiquitous brands that I had seen. But what I wanted to know is, if you look under the bonnet, does it actually do the job that it should do for consumers and the public? So I applied for that role and spent the next 3 years sort of transforming Considerate Constructors and really sort of looking at how we make sure it is delivering for the public. And within that, I also found myself looking at the whole industry debate that was going on following the Grenfell fire, the Grenfell Tower fire, and its response to Dame Judith Hackett's Building a Safer Future review. And I volunteered my time on developing a couple of initiatives which were really about culture change, because actually most of my career in transformational change and ethical business has all been about culture change. So it's all about trying to get industries to move to a different mindset in terms of their behaviours. And so I volunteered my time, set up the Building Safer Future Charter, and then was invited to set up the independent not-for-profit body that is the Code for Construction Product Information. And that one really grabbed my attention.
When you came into the industry from outside, were you surprised by what you saw in construction?
Yes, I was, yes. It's such an interesting kind of diverging tale that exists in construction, in my view. On the one hand, you've got You've got people of problem solvers, dynamic problem solvers, people who want to get things done, who really do sort of throw themselves at their work and believe in their industry and what they're delivering. But on the other hand, I found myself really worried about how the industry was actually responding to the challenges that had been brought following the Grenfell tragedy, and just not seeing the change that they needed to be making. So I really wanted to be part of that story, which is why I got involved with setting up these organisations.
And so your leadership of the CCPI comes at sort of a critical time for the industry. What motivated you to take that role, and what's been your primary focus since becoming the CEO?
So it dovetails really well with a lot of the sort of work I've done in the past, just looking at product information and product safety, whether that was when I was working in consumer protection or even back in the earlier days when I was creating eco-labels. What really motivated me is the product information element of this discussion is one of the sort of key points in the whole discussion. You only need to read the report that came out from the inquiry on September the 4th last year to be horrified by some of the behaviours that manufacturers displayed and been found wanting through that report. But Dame Judith Hackett talked about that in her Building Safer Future review when that was published, and Paul Morell and Annalise Day also talked about issues with product information in their report. So it's been a really consistent area of major concern coming out of the learnings from the Grenfell tragedy. It's an area that's got to be addressed, and it's absolutely critical, because how can you get the right product in the right place, which is fundamental to building safer buildings, if you can't have greater confidence in the product information that's being provided? It doesn't seem possible to me. So it's one of the key elements.
So the CCPI sets out to ensure sort of clear, accurate and unambiguous construction product information. How has adoption been so far, and what are the challenges do you think that remain?
So, David, to be more precise, what CCPI does is setting out to move the industry to a place where product information is clear, accurate, accessible, up-to-date and unambiguous. It isn't a simple tick list that if you just check that these boxes are ticked, we can rely on the product information.
But the industry loves a tick list.
Yeah, well,
it's
so that is
on tick
yes,
lists.
and so that is why I say that, because actually I think that's one of the key elements of mindset change that needs to happen. At CCPI, the assessment process has got a number of elements to it. Before a company can even come to us with its product information, the company goes through an organisational assessment, which looks first and foremost at its leadership and culture. And it does so using processes that we have adopted from other major hazard sectors: oil and gas, chemicals, nuclear, aviation. All use those processes to say, what are the ethics and behaviour of this company? Is this company creating a culture and environment where actually, if there are concerns about product information, they're being learnt and individuals within the company can speak up? So the first thing we do is look at the leadership and culture of a company and say, can you actually work to the standard that the code is asking you to? Because if you can't, we can't work with you. Because at the end of the day, at the code, we corroborate the information that's being provided with the claims that are being made in marketing. But we still have to rely on the manufacturer presenting us with that information as being correct. And we will look at it and we will question it if it doesn't feel right. But we have to be able to work with the manufacturers on a level of sort of trust and approve. So that leadership and culture piece really matters. We've got to see that we're working with an organisation that has got those cultural behaviours in place. Only if they've got that, and then also only if they go through our management system questionnaire and provide evidence behind the questionnaire, and all of that is independently checked by one of our assessors. Only if they go through those things can they then show us product information around a specific product set and the marketing that goes with it, and only then will we look at what's presented and allow them to carry the mark. But even then, David, they can only carry the mark for 2 years. During that time, and this is for me the most important bit of the code actually, they stay registered with us. They are contractually obliged to continually improve their product information, so we can randomly sample anything that's out there that's carrying the mark and check that they are actually abiding by the code. And if they're not, we can call them to account to do it or remove the mark. And we also have, which I think is a key bit, a whistleblower sort of issues portal online where anybody looking at that product information, that mark, can come and tell us if they're seeing something that perhaps our sampling hasn't seen, and we can get it corrected. So really what the code does is it gets manufacturers to present themselves to working to a certain standard that we've checked, but also to be willing to be held to that standard over time. So it is not a tick box. It is actually a continuous improvement approach. And fundamentally, it's about driving that change and that culture change of you're responsible, you're accountable for your product information. You've got to keep it up to date and you're going to have to keep working on it. And that's much, much better than just saying, here's a list, you must do that, you mustn't do this. It's never going to change this industry.
But I can hear commercial directors in these organisations, but this is cost. This is going to drive our costs up. How do they balance the commercial pressures with the regulatory and other pressures that they face? And particularly if you are, say, a manufacturer in the US or China or somewhere like that, you've not been subject to the Grenfell inquiry and the reports, and part of that culture, shall we say, or the behaviours. Do you hear any kickback on them from them?
Of course, cost is always the debate, isn't it? We're able to answer it very well at CCPI because we are not for profit. So we're not here to make money. We are here to engage the industry as far as, as much as the industry as we can possibly get to engage with us. So not being profit making helps us keep our costs down and be able to sort of cross transfer so that we can get from micro organizations right the way through to very large organizations and manage our cost base accordingly. So we keep the cost down, and that does help keeping companies engaged. But you are right, there is a challenge for companies to sort of cope with what they're now being asked to do, especially in an environment where they've been in a fairly flat market for some time. The reality is, I think I turn that on its head, David, and say, what's the cost of not doing it? I think what we have seen from Grenfell, but actually not just Grenfell, you even look at the example of Lakanore House is another example. You look at issues like the Scottish schools. Actually, what we've seen is there are costs to product information not being clear, accurate, accessible, up to date and unambiguous. And actually, it is one of those scenarios where I think it has to become business as usual. And working with CCPI, because we're not for profit and we seek to keep the costs down, we create an environment where companies actually get real value. We recently went to the first wave of organisations who'd gone through our process and asked them the difficult question: is this actually bringing value for you? Do you agree that it's helping you market your products better to customers, show that they can have greater confidence in product information? You ask a question like that, you don't actually know what the answer is going to be coming back. I was really pleasantly surprised to see 97% of the companies, the first companies that went through the process with us, came back and said, yeah, we agree, or we strongly agree. This has really helped us in positioning ourselves as an organisation that's being responsible with product information that you can have greater confidence in. And they also gave us similar percentages around how it's helped them engage their staff in it and how it's helped them engage their staff in culture change. I think that's what matters. So when you're thinking about costs, there's also the costs of not doing it, not being part of the change.
We kind of divide up, in BESA, we divide the industry into thirds. There's 1/3 who get stuff straight away and understand they have to do it. And I would suggest that's the group you're talking to who've done the first lot. There's a second group who go, I don't know why I'm being asked for this, but I will do it because I need to stay compliant. And there's 1/3 go, we're never going to do that. We're fine as we are. We're just going to ignore all of that and it'll be fine. Is that what you see within the manufacturer groups?
I think I'd make the percentages a little smaller.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. I'm afraid. I think the early adopters in this industry is much smaller than 30%. That's not what I've seen. I'd maybe reduce it to fifths. So 1/5 as early adopters, 3/5 as that middle ground, trying to work out why I should do this and engage with it. And the last fifth that's probably never going to bother. Sorry, that's probably very...
That's fine.
I don't see the sector moving fast enough towards what I think is the future of this industry.
So would you then, another thing we say is that we're an industry where just good enough is a bit too good. As long as it looks like the thing that is in the specification, that will do. Thank you very much.
It's very hard because I think that does ring true, but not of everyone. There is a real world of where that is very unfair, where there are individuals and companies who really take this seriously and engaging with it. There's just not enough of them. That's all. That just good enough, it probably does live in that middle 3/5 that I mentioned. But perhaps in the back end of it, in the front end of it, there are those that I see starting to sort of look at it and say, yeah, we're going to have to engage with this. And perhaps what's held them back is not necessarily the motivation that you're talking about, David, just good enough, but actually the reality of managing all of the other things they have to manage. I think there's a little bit of that as well.
As it becomes easier to check, do you think digital tools and technologies and maybe AI will help this become more widespread? Because it is easier to check, therefore people will check.
I think eventually, but I don't think now. Right now, we're talking about culture change. We fundamentally are talking about an industry getting a new mindset, which is about being part of collective responsibility and having individual responsibility. That is the mindset that when Dame Judith Hackett presented the Building Safer Future Review, that is what she was talking about. You have a collective responsibility to deliver quality, safe buildings, but you also have individual responsibilities that actually she laid out very clearly, particularly in relation to high-rise residential buildings. But it's not just that. It should be across the built environment, obviously. Eventually, AI checking for different phrases or words that are being used and things can be very helpful. But then we're just back to checklists and tick lists. And that's what technology can help us with eventually. But right now, I think we're talking about culture change. And that's where at CCPI, things like our continuous improvement approach and being registered with us and making those changes and being part of reassessment over time, absolutely critical. We're not going to shift this industry without that.
How do you engage with the SMEs and smaller manufacturers who might lack the resources of larger organisations? Well, they definitely will do, but to help them implement compliance frameworks?
Yeah, it's really important. It's particularly important in the manufacturing sector. Depending on whose data you look at, there's somewhere around 26,000 companies in UK manufacturing, and 19,000 of them are SMEs or micros. So the micro, small and medium, and so big chunk of the industry. So it matters to us at CCPI to be able to work with SMEs, and so that's where our cost structure is really sort of weighted to be helpful and engage SMEs. We've still got to cover our costs, and we've got independent assessment that costs, but you also get value out of it from a company. So we try to help by making sure we've got an appropriate sliding scale of cost. But actually, it's our system and process that we try to modify to help SMEs. And actually, yesterday I was having a discussion with, we have our monthly assessor forums where our assessors come together to talk about the assessments they're doing, not in terms of the names of the company, but their experience of what's going on. And we were talking just then about how we want to modify our leadership and culture process a bit more so that actually when we're dealing with a micro or very small organisation, you've got staff under 20, filling in a statistically significant culture survey and having assessors do validation interviews with individuals works well when you've got a large organisation. When you've got a smaller organisation, it's much harder. And also within those leadership and culture surveys, anonymity for the employee is actually really important. It's very hard to stay anonymous if there's 5 of you in a company. So our system and process for micro and small organisations is really being sort of shaped and honed by what we've learned with working with the ones that we've worked with up until now. And there have been some very good ones step forward to say, how do we make sure we can get under the skin of the culture of those organisations, but be able to really work with staff by talking to staff and understanding what's going on in the company and doing structured interviews rather than relying too much on a survey tool and validation interviews. So we alter it depending on the size of the company, because that matters for this sector.
So in BESA, we represent companies engaged in design, installation, maintenance and building engineering services, so contractors. How would you see them using the CCPI?
There's a really important side of the CCPI, which is about clients, which is about the demand side, whether you're a client, whether you're a contractor. If you're demanding, or if you are part of the demand side of the industry, then you've got the opportunity to say, well, actually, I'd prefer to work with products that have been CCPI assessed and I can have greater confidence in their product information. And I know that manufacturer is working with CCPI and willing to address issues that either have been found or when they're found, if something comes up that hasn't come up in the assessment. So there's a whole demand side supporter piece where companies can come to us and pledge to support CCPI and promote CCPI within their supply chain. And we began that conversation in the sort of very obvious place of contractors and developers to go to them and say, well, actually, don't you think you should be building this into your supply chain? And we're building quite a register of organisations that have actually signed up to it and are working through their supply chain to encourage and promote and engage them in getting on and doing CCPI. Members of the BESA could also do that, can also be looking for that or promoting that, encouraging that with the suppliers that they're working with. So just come to us and engage with us. We've got a pledge you can sign.
There's currently a construction products reform green paper. How's that going to impact the CCPI, do you think? So
the paper, I think, is a very important piece indeed. I think it was a very sensible thing for the government to do a green paper. On the one hand, I was sort of frustrated when are we actually going to get the secondary legislation that follows from the Building Safety Act? Let's get it done. So on the one hand, I sort of wanted to just see the change happen. On the other hand, I think what they've done right and what they're doing right is to genuinely consult with the industry. It's a really complex sector, construction products and construction product manufacturing, and actually not jumping to conclusion and actually seeking to get it right is a sensible thing. So I think they're right to put it out there. I was really pleased to see that CCPI is mentioned a number of times in the Green Paper. I sort of learned some of it off by heart, and Chapter 6 is all about putting safe products on the marketplace and product information. And there's actually a whole section and call to action which says that the government expects the industry to adopt CCPI. And that just echoes calls that have been made by people like Dame Judith Hackett and Paul Morell and Annalise Day in their report. So I really hope that what comes out of the Green Paper is that they follow up on that call to action and they push further the adoption of the code, because I don't think we will see the sort of culture change we need in terms of product information management, and therefore the quality of product information management go up without it.
And looking ahead, what are your hopes for the future of construction product standards in the UK, and what will success look like, do you think, for CCPI?
I think the industry has a real opportunity. Like I said, you asked me what was it like when I first came into the industry, and I said that on the one hand I was surprised by some of the issues that clearly existed, and they're very substantial issues, and there's pretty clear proof of that those issues exist in all sorts of corners. And then there is the horror of the Grenfell tragedy, which makes it undeniable. So on the one hand, I've been absolutely horrified by that. But I think that what it presents is the opportunity to really drive change for an industry to actually embrace what it needs to embrace: responsibility, accountability. It's got to embrace those aspects, and transparency. All things that this industry yet is not good at and is not culturally what it should be doing. At the end of the day, we all should be playing our part in assuring that whatever building project we're in, the part that we're playing is delivering on building safety. Everybody has that responsibility. And if you haven't got that responsibility in your head and your heart, if you're not winning hearts and minds on that, then I don't think you should be in the sector. That's the change that I want to see for the future.
And does it go beyond building safety, though? It's about building performance, isn't it? So that actually, if you claim a performance of a product, it should perform to that standard that you claim it can go.
Absolutely. And in fact, at CCPI, we don't just look at building safety or performance claims. We look at environmental claims, sustainability claims. If you're doing CCPI, actually, it will help you in the future with things like your digital product passport. At the end of the day, product information needs to be clear, accurate, accessible, up-to-date and unambiguous so that whatever we're using the information for, we can have greater confidence in it.
And that's a great place to end it on, I think. So I'm going to try now and summarize what we've discussed. Okay. Good luck to me there. So you came into the industry from as a complete outsider, surprised by what you found, but have a drive and desire to change the culture within the industry and behaviors within the industry. The CCPI has been set up to make sure that manufacturers deliver products that are safe but also perform in the way that they are designed to do. There is an issue within the industry about the number of companies who are really at the forefront of this drive for change. The legislation will help that process on the way through. The clarity, the unambiguity of the information that's provided can only be of benefit to everybody within construction. Most importantly, I guess, those who occupy these and use these buildings. We always say, it's important because 90% of us spend 90% of our time inside a building. So buildings at work is really important, and the products are really important within that. And we're making significant steps, but we're waiting for the breakthrough on the CCPI to get real traction. Would that
definitely.
Be a fair summary?
I think so. I think we've got to push forward. There's still a lot to do.
So once again, Amanda Long, Chief Executive, Construction Product Information Limited. Thanks for joining me on Behind the Built Environment podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's that time again. The BESA Industry Awards are back and bigger than ever. Once again taking place at the Brewery London on the 16th of October. This is your chance to shine. From apprentices and engineers to employers and pioneers, the BESA Awards celebrate the very best in building services. And this year, we've raised the bar. We've introduced brand new categories, giving more people more ways to be recognised for the incredible work they do. New for 2025, we're spotlighting excellence across the UK with our Contractor of the Year Nations Awards. That's right, one winner each from England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, all competing for the ultimate title. UK Contractor of the Year. Think you've got what it takes? Whether you're a trailblazer in sustainability, leading in technical innovation, or going above and beyond for your people, this is your moment to shine. Entries are now open, and it's completely free to enter. Head to awards.besa.com and tell us why you deserve to be on that stage. But don't wait, the deadline's fast approaching as entries close on the 4th of July. Step up, stand out. It's your time to shine. Take the spotlight at the BESA Industry Awards. The building engineering sector is changing fast, and the companies that lead will be the ones who adapt, innovate, and collaborate. This is your invitation to join them at the Brewery London. The BESA Annual Conference is back, and this year we're on a race to the top. On the 16th of October, we're bringing the industry together. Contractors, consultants, clients, suppliers and policymakers for one unmissable day of insights, inspiration and action. From technical sessions and regulatory updates to the developing our people and running a business streams, every session is packed with practical takeaways you can use straight away. Network with the best in the business. Explore the Meet the Expert breakout zone and be part of the conversation shaping the future of our sector. And with building safety, competence, sustainability and innovation at the heart of the agenda, this is where real progress happens. Tickets are on sale now, but places are limited, so don't get left behind. Be in the room where it all happens. Head to conference.thebesa.com and book your place at the BESA Annual Conference 2025. Race to the top. Are you in?
And now on to the podcast news. So join us for the must-attend event of the year, the BESA Annual Conference, which returns on Thursday, the 16th of October, with game-changing insights, expert panels, and powerful networking. This year's theme, Race to the Top. Don't miss your chance to be part of the conversation shaping the future of building services, and tickets are now available via the BESA website. Protect your business with BESA's legal support and training. As a BESA member, you can get access to expert legal advice, contract templates, and dispute resolution support, plus free online legal courses via the BESA Academy. We have recently developed a new course, Understanding Collateral Warranties and Third-Party Rights. So learn how to spot unfair terms, reduce your legal risk, and protect your business on major contracts. And also available, an Introduction to Contract Law, perfect for building your legal confidence. Start learning at the BESA Academy and explore your legal member benefits. It's all available at the BESA website for members. Thank you for tuning in to Behind the Built Environment. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more in-depth conversations with industry leaders. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share with your colleagues. Stay connected with BESA for the latest updates and insight into our industry. But until next time, I'm David Frise, and this has been Behind the Built Environment. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Built Environment podcast from BESA. If you like what you heard today, then please follow and rate us on your favourite podcast app. Come and join us over on LinkedIn, BESA Group, and carry on the conversation. And if you want to find out more about joining the BESA community, then please visit thebesa.com to start your journey with us today.